In a peaceful village surrounded by lush green hills, there lived a wise and kind king named Derick. He was a fortunate ruler, blessed with wealth, wisdom, and the love of his people. King Derick was married to a beautiful and gentle woman, Queen Anne. She was known for her kindness and calm nature, always bringing peace wherever she went. The couple shared a deep love, and their happiness grew even more when they were blessed with a daughter, Princess Sandra. Sandra was their only child, and she was known far and wide for her breathtaking beauty. She had a face that shone like the morning sun and a heart as pure as gold. Any man who laid eyes on her couldn't help but admire her. However, despite being the princess, Sandra never let her status make her proud. She was humble, kind, and respectful to everyone, whether rich or poor. Unlike some princesses who lived in luxury and looked down on others, Sandra blended so well with the other village maidens that if you didn't know her, you would never guess she was royalty. She listened to her parents and obeyed their every word without question. She never disrespected anyone, nor did she use her position to mistreat others. This made the people of the village love her even more. But there was a special law in the village that made Sandra the center of attention. According to their tradition, if a ruling king had no son, his daughter's husband would be crowned as the next king after the king passed away. This meant that whoever married Princess Sandra would one day rule the village. This law sent excitement and tension through the entire village. Every mother, rich or poor, dreamed of having their son marry Sandra. They saw it as an opportunity to bring power and wealth into their family. Mothers became restless, doing everything possible to make sure their sons got close to the princess. Some went as far as trying to charm Sandra with expensive gifts, while others sent their sons to befriend her. Every young man in the village, whether noble or ordinary, began dreaming of becoming Sandra's husband and eventually the future king. Some of them even started dressing better and behaving more politely, hoping to impress her. Others sought the help of elders and spiritual leaders, hoping for blessings that would make Sandra fall in love with them. But Sandra was unaware of all the schemes surrounding her. She continued living her simple and peaceful life, unaware that she had become the most sought-after bride in the entire village. Meanwhile, King Derick and Queen Anne knew that a day would come when their daughter would have to choose a husband. They wanted the best for her, not just any man who desired power, but someone who would truly love and cherish her. They watched closely as young men tried to win her heart, knowing that the choice of a husband would not only change Sandra's life, but also determine the future of their kingdom. Would Sandra find true love among those seeking to marry her? Or would someone try to win her heart for selfish reasons? Only time would tell. In the same peaceful village, there was a young man named Ben. He was an orphan who had grown up facing many hardships, but despite his struggles, he was strong, kind, and courageous. Ben had no riches, no family name to boast of, and no powerful connections. Yet he had something far greater, an honest heart and a fearless spirit. Ben had always admired Princess Sandra from afar, not because she was royalty, but because of her kindness and humility. Unlike other maidens, she treated everyone with respect, even the poorest villagers. However, Ben never imagined that a princess could ever love someone like him. He saw himself as a nobody, unworthy of a woman as beautiful and noble as Sandra. What Ben didn't know was that Sandra loved him deeply. Over the years, Ben had saved Sandra from many dangers. There were times when mischievous village boys, jealous of her royal status, tried to harass her. Each time, Ben appeared like a guardian angel, protecting her from harm. Sandra had come to see Ben as more than just a brave young man. He had become her hero, the one who made her feel safe. With every rescue, her love for him grew stronger. She felt helplessly in love with him, but she could never tell her parents. She knew that no matter how much she loved Ben, King Derick and Queen Anne would never approve of their union. To them, a future king had to come from a noble or wealthy family. The idea of their daughter marrying a mere orphan was unthinkable. But fate had its own plans. The king's announcement. One evening, King Derick summoned all the women of the village to the palace. The women gathered excitedly, wondering what the king had to say. The air was filled with whispers and eager anticipation. Then, the king stood before them and spoke in a firm but gentle voice. "In 3 market days," he declared, "all the young men of this village must come to the palace. On that day, my daughter, Princess Sandra, will choose the man she wishes to marry." The entire courtyard erupted in cheers. The women were overjoyed. Every mother in the village had been hoping and praying that their son would be the one to marry the princess, and now the opportunity had finally arrived. Immediately, the village became alive with excitement. Mothers began dressing their sons in fine clothes, teaching them manners, and reminding them to smile more. Some even went to local herbalists, seeking charms that would make their sons more attractive to the princess. Every young man, rich or poor, began preparing for the day that could change their lives forever. But in the midst of all this excitement, Sandra had only one person on her mind, Ben. That night, she secretly went to find him. Sandra's secret request: Ben was by the river, gathering firewood, when he heard footsteps approaching. He turned and was surprised to see Princess Sandra standing before him. "Your Highness," he said, bowing respectfully, "what brings you here so late?" Sandra smiled softly. "Ben, I need to talk to you." Ben put down the firewood and faced her. "Is everything all right?" Sandra hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Ben, in 3 market days, I will have to choose a husband. My father has made the announcement and all the young men in the village will be there." Ben nodded. "Yes, I heard about it." Sandra took a deep breath. "I want you to come too." Ben's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? Why?" Sandra stepped closer. "Because I want you to be there. Please, Ben." Ben shook his head, his expression filled with doubt. "Sandra, I have no reason to be there. I am just a poor orphan. I have nothing to offer you. Even if by some miracle you chose me, your father would never allow it. It is impossible." Sandra's eyes filled with sadness, but she refused to give up. "Ben, I know what my father wants, but this is my decision. At least come and watch. If nothing else, just be there." Ben hesitated. He wanted to refuse again, but something in Sandra's eyes made him change his mind. "All right," he finally said. "I will come." Sandra smiled with relief. "Thank you, Ben." As she walked away, Ben stood there, deep in thought. He had no idea what would happen in 3 market days, but for the first time in his life, he felt a tiny spark of hope. Little did he know that the day of selection would bring surprises no one in the village could ever expect. The Princess and the Throne, Part 3. Final part. The entire village was filled with excitement. The day of the grand selection had finally arrived. The palace courtyard was packed with villagers, mothers, fathers, and young men, all waiting for the moment when Princess Sandra would choose her husband. Women danced joyfully, singing songs of celebration. They had spent days preparing their sons, hoping and praying that one of them would be chosen to marry the princess and become the next king. Among the crowd stood a young man named Peter. Unlike the other young men who were nervous about the selection, Peter was overly confident. Days before, he had taken a bet with his friends, boasting that the princess would surely choose him. But Peter did not just rely on luck. He secretly sought the help of a powerful herbalist to enlarge his manliness to an extraordinary size, thinking that this would impress the princess and make her pick him. The grand selection begins. As the drums sounded, the palace gates opened, and Princess Sandra gracefully stepped out. Dressed in a beautiful royal gown, she looked like a goddess. The crowd went silent, their eyes fixed on her every move. With a calm and focused expression, Sandra began walking among the young men, carefully observing each one. But in reality, she wasn't looking for just any man. She was searching for Ben. Sandra's heart pounded as her eyes moved from face to face. Where was Ben? Had he really come, as he had promised? She grew anxious, hoping that he had kept his word. Just then, a sudden commotion erupted at the palace entrance. Peter's shocking entrance. Peter stormed into the palace, walking with exaggerated confidence. His plan was simple. He wanted to shock everyone, especially the princess, into choosing him. As he took his bold steps, the villagers gasped in horror. The entire crowd froze. Women covered their mouths, and men shook their heads in disbelief. Even the palace guards couldn't believe their eyes. Right there in front of everyone was Peter, showing off the unnatural transformation he had done to himself. The princess, stunned and disgusted, took a step back. The entire palace was silent for a moment before the women screamed, "What are we seeing?" Sandra's face twisted in irritation. She couldn't believe what Peter had done just to impress her. Without hesitation, she turned to her guards and ordered, "Bounce him out of my sight immediately." The palace bouncers grabbed Peter by his arms as he cried and begged, "Please, princess, I spent so much money on this transformation. Pick me." Peter pleaded desperately, but his cries fell on deaf ears. The guards dragged him out of the palace, and the crowd erupted into laughter and mockery. His foolishness had not only embarrassed him, but had also cost him his dignity. The unexpected choice. Just as the laughter began to die down, another figure entered the palace. It was Ben. He walked in quietly, humble as always, unaware of the drama that had just unfolded. The moment Sandra's eyes landed on him, her face lit up with joy. Without hesitation, she rushed to him, wrapped her arms around him, and held him tightly. The entire palace went silent. The villagers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Out of all the rich and noble young men present, the princess had chosen Ben, the poor orphan. The king and queen exchanged worried glances. They had hoped Sandra would choose someone from a wealthy or noble background. But now, she had made her choice, and there was nothing they could do to change it. Gasps and whispers filled the palace as the villagers struggled to understand why Sandra would choose a man with nothing. But for Sandra, the decision was clear. She loved Ben, and no wealth or status could change that. The royal wedding and a new beginning. Days later, the entire village gathered again, but this time for a grand wedding. Princess Sandra and Ben were officially married in a beautiful ceremony filled with love and joy. Ben, once an orphan with no family, was now the husband of a princess. More importantly, he was deeply loved and cherished by Sandra, who saw him not for his status but for his heart. Over time, the villagers came to respect and admire Ben. He ruled alongside Sandra with kindness and wisdom, proving that being a great leader was not about wealth or background, but about love, compassion, and a pure heart. Moral lessons 1. True love is not about status or wealth. Sandra chose Ben because she loved him for who he was, not for what he had. 2. Humility and kindness will always be rewarded. Ben, despite being poor, won the heart of the princess because of his good heart and courage. 3. Foolishness and greed lead to downfall. Peter's desperate attempt to impress the princess only brought him shame and embarrassment. 4. Parents should respect their children's choices. The king and queen initially disapproved of Sandra's choice, but in the end, they saw that love matters more than social status. 5. A good leader is not chosen by birth but by character. Ben proved that a person's worth is measured by their actions, not their background. Thank you so much for following this amazing story to the very end. I hope you enjoyed it and learned valuable lessons along the way. If you love great stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on new stories. Stay tuned for more exciting and meaningful tales. Until next time, keep believing in love, kindness, and destiny.